next part of the story, which is the Jewish people actually going and conquering the city of Ai. And you'll see that it was different the way they did it than other cities. Anyway, so mentioning that when the Jewish people lose that initial battle, so Yeshua ben Nun realizes that something's off, right? And he davens to Hashem. That's what we talked about last week with Tachnun. Yeshua ben Nun's davening of Tachnun. And the Rebbeinu Shalom then reveals to him that someone violated the Chayrim and took money from the city of Yericho. And so then Yeshua ben Nun says, tell me who it is. And Hashem says, no, you have to figure it out on your own. And so in the pasuk itself, again, you don't have the pasukim in front of you, but in the pasuk itself, it doesn't really describe how Yeshua ben Nun figured this out. It just says that he went like methodically. That first he caught Shevet Yehuda, that they were the one that were caught to be the ones that within them someone violated the Chayrim. And then within that, the pasuk says, then he caught specifically the family of Zara, and then that eventually working way down all the way to the individual person of Achan. But it doesn't say in the pasuk how this happened. So if you take, so that's what we're going to be focusing on this morning, that process itself and how Yeshua ben Nun found Achan and how that relates to Achan's sin b'chlal. So if you take a look at the first Marmakim, so this is a medrash in Pirkei D'Relazar. So the medrash says like this. That even though again this is not recorded in the Chumash, but this is the tradition that we had. So it says in the Medrash, Ra b'yud beis avonim sh'ala kain gadol shem keneged yud beis shvatim. So it says in the Medrash like this, that initially in order to first find out what shevet we're dealing with, so what Yeshua ben Nun did was that he went to the kain gadol, to Elazar, who was the son of Aaron, the kain gadol at the time, and he looked at the breastplate, the chayshon of the 12 stones of the kain gadol. And each stone, we know, corresponds to another shevet. It has the name of the shevet on it. The kol shevet of the shevet. Now, B'derech Klal says the Medrash, when it comes to each shevet, shayos davar shel tzedakah. Let's say a particular shevet did a gevaldige zach, they did a big mitzvah, or whatever it is. Ha'isa avnoi magbiyah sayret. And B'derech Klal, then the stone that corresponded to that shevet would shine a little brighter. That's B'derech Klal what would happen when that shevet had a big schus for them. The whole shevet shayos davar shel avera. But if, let's say, there was a particular shevet that had something wrong with that shevet, and a ver happened within that shevet, then the opposite, then that particular stone, the light would be a little bit duller. So that's usually what would happen. V'roh, so Yeshua ben Nun goes to the shvatim, to the stones, and he sees Yehuda maches. He sees that the stone of Yehuda is a little bit duller; it's not as bright as it should be. V'yoda shevet Yehuda mal v'cher, and that initially tells him, okay, right away we're dealing with shevet Yehuda. Now that he's discovered it's Shevet Yehuda, v'hippel garolas b'neihem, then he moves to a different process of figuring out who the culprit is within Shevet Yehuda, and he uses garolas. He uses a lottery system. So he makes a garol between all the families of Yehuda, and it falls on the family of Zarach, and he moves on like that. And then within that family, he makes a garol amongst all the individual members of the family. V'nilkad Achan ben Karmi, and then Achan is caught, he's discovered to be the one to violate the chayr. So that's the process that Yeshua ben Nun used. So 2 ingredients, right? The chayshan, to figure out what shevet, and then from there, using a garol. Okay. Now, so it has to be significant, the fact that he used these 2 things. I mean, if he's going to end up using a garol, then why not just make a garol from the beginning, find out what shevet is? Okay, so you could save some money on paper. I mean, there's clearly something going on. We're talking about a national security situation, so clearly he's allowed to use the chayshin to figure this stuff out, but there must be some significance that these 2 aspects are being used over here. Now, to go a little bit more, to get a little bit more of an understanding of what was going on, so in Marmukah number 2, so that was the Medrash, Pirkei D'Relazar. In Marmukah number 2, there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, Mem Gimel Meveis, that also talks about this story. And the Medrash focuses on a pasuk that actually a couple weeks ago we spoke about this, that when Yeshua ben Nun finds Achan, so he uses language that's very polite. He says, please, my brother, please admit what you did. So he uses very polite, he's begging him to admit. So the Gemara says like this, Tan Rabbanan, Na, Yeshua ben Nun says the word please, Eina Lashon Bakasha. The word Na means a request. It means he's asking Achan to admit. Even though, if you think about it, we just saw from the Medrash that he was caught. I mean, the girl fell on Achan, so we now know that it was him. But still, he wants Achan to admit and to acknowledge and to sort of show how the girl was correct. So he says like this, says the Gemara, Yeshua. So this is the background I mentioned. When the Rebbeinu Shalom says to Yeshua ben Nun, Chata Yisrael, the Jewish people sinned, So Amr Lefanav, so Yeshua ben Nun says, Ravana Shalom, Master of the Universe, Michata, who's the one that did it? Amr Lei, so Hashem says, V'chidalter ani lach, but I'm a Baal Lashon Hara, I'm going to tell you who did it. Hapel Geralos, go use the Geral system and find out who did it. Now, the Bavli doesn't record the fact that he used the Chayshin to first find out what Shevet it is. That the Medrash says, the Gemara skips out that point, but Hashem said specifically use Geralos. So after he did the Chayshin to find out what Shevet, so it says, so Yeshua goes, Halach the Geralos. He again makes Gerals, the lottery. V'nafal Geral Alach, and eventually it falls on this person, Achan. So Amar Lai Yeshua. So Amar Lai. So then when Yeshua confronts Achan, so Achan responds. He says, Yeshua, but Geral ataboy lie. What you're going to prove that I'm the one that's guilty because of a Geral? Atav Elazar Kain Shnei Gedolei Hadar. If let's say I took you two, Yeshua ben Nun, and the Kain Gadol, Elazar the Kain Gadol, Gedolei Hadar, the big tzaddikim in the generation. Imani Ma'apelechem Geral. If I'm making a Geral between the two of you, Alechem Mekem Hu Neifel. It's automatically going to fall on one of you, right? So you're like, you caught me. If you make a Geral amongst all the members of my family, someone is going to get picked out of the lottery. So it's not a raya that it's me. If I made a Geral between the two of you, one of you would be picked. So what are you coming with Gerals? That's not a proof of anything. So so this is where the pasuk hints to Yeshua ben Nun's request. Amrlai. So Yeshua ben Nun says, he looks at him and he says, I'm asking you, Al toitzi laz al geralos. Don't start questioning and being ma'ir issues with the system of a geral that we're using. Shasida Eretz Yisrael shetischalek b'geral, because we're conquering Eretz Yisrael right now, and Eretz Yisrael is going to be divided amongst the shvatim and amongst the families with the system of geral. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Parashas Maasai, ach b'geral yichalek aretz, that the mitzvah is, the halach was that Eretz Yisrael has to be divided with the geral system. So Yeshua ben Nun is telling Achan that by you're being ma'ir right now on geralas, the fact that you're questioning the hashgacha pratis in the geral system that we're using right now, that's not just something that's right now. That might cause a problem with Klal Yisrael's belief in Geros that we're about to use for Eretz Yisrael. So I ask you, please admit that you did and show the whole Jewish people that the Geros system is correct, because by you doing so, you're going to be mechazik the Jewish people's emunah in this Geros system that's going to be needed to divide up Eretz Yisrael properly. That's the Gemara. Now, what we see is that when Achan admitted, the admission of Achan is not only a personal admission that, obviously he acknowledged, and that's a schus for him, but he was also at the same time being mechazik, the inyan, the emunah in the Geral system that the Jewish people would need to divide up Eretz Yisrael properly. So already, in other words, a parallel is being drawn between the Geral system that was used to find Achan and the Geral system that's going to be used to divide up Eretz Yisrael later on in Sefer Yeshua. Now, it's interesting, therefore, that the Geral system that was used to divide up Eretz Yisrael also involved not just the Geral, but also involved the Chayshin. If you take a look at Marmukah number 3, it says the Gemara in Bava Basra, Kuf Chav Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara here is talking about how the Geral was used to divide up Eretz Yisrael amongst the Shvatim. And this is the process. So it says the Gemara like this: When Yischalke El Geral, the Eretz Yisrael was divided up amongst the Shvatim with a Geral. The truth is, the Shvatim for sure, it was divided up with the Geral system, as we'll see. Even within the Shvatim, many Rishonim hold that even every particular family, it was also divided up with a Geral system. Shnemer ach b'Geral, it says in pasuk that you have to use a Geral. But now the Gemara explains. But you should know it wasn't just a Geral involved. At the same time, it was a Geral plus the Chayshin, plus the Urim V'Tumim. The miraculous prophecy that came with the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. Shnemer, how do we know that? So it says in pasuk al pi haGeral. It says in pasuk not just that you should use a Geral, with whatever the Geral says you should do. So it says the Gemara, a girl doesn't talk. So the pasuk is hinting to you that alongside the Geral, there was also another process involved helping it along. That's verbal. That's the Kohen Gadol with the breastplate, able to verbalize what the Geral is doing. So okay, so how did it work out? So the Gemara says like this: Elazar melubish urim v'tumim. So Elazar is the Kohen Gadol. He's wearing the big tekuna gedayla. He's wearing the chayshim with the urim v'tumim. The Yeshuva Kol Yisrael Laimdim Lefanav, and Yeshuva and Klal Yisrael are standing in front of him. The Klapei Shel Shvatim, the Klapei Shel Tchumim Menachem Lefanav. There's two boxes. One box full of all the names of the Shvatim on different papers, 12 papers of Shvatim, and another box full of 12 papers, each one designating a particular portion of Eretz Yisrael. And so this is the process. So then the Kohen Gadol with the Urim Tumim, with the breastplate, with the nevuah that comes from the Urim Tumim, he would, before any lot was drawn, he would say with Ruach HaKodesh, and he would say, for example, Zvulun Oila, Tchum Akai Oila Ima. He would say that we're about to pick Zvulun, for example, and the border that's revolving around the city of Akko is going to be picked out also. He would predict with Ruach HaKodesh what Sheva is going to be picked up and what Chelek of Eretz Yisrael is going to be picked. So he would say again, Zvulun Oila and Tchum Akam Oila Ima. And Tarf Bakalpi Shal Shvatim. Then someone was designated to pick out from the box of the Shvatim. All the other Zvulun, and Zvulun was picked. And Tarf Bakalpi Shal Tchumen. And then someone, according to some Rishonim, it had to be at the same time. Someone else is taking out a portion from the box of Tchumen of Eretz Yisrael. All the other Tchumako. And that portion that was predicted also comes out around Akko. Then you go to the next one. Naftali Oila. Utchum Ginaiser Oilim. And so on and so forth. And Tarf Kilpi Shal Shvatim. So based on the prediction, the next guy would go and take the next piece of paper. Naftali, and Naftali's taka picked Tarf Kilpi Shal Tchumen, and they would take the portion, take a piece of paper from the portions of Eretz Yisrael. They'll be other Tchum Ginaiser. V'chein Kol Sheva V'Shevetz. This is how the process worked. It wasn't just with the Gairol. It was with the Tumim, with the Choshen, predicting what the Gairol is going to come out with, and that's all connected with the pasuk. It says Ach beGairol, that has to be divided amongst the Gairol, but it's also Api HaGairol. There's also someone predicting what the Gairol is going to say, and that's the Tumim. Okay, that's the Gemara. Now, again, just simple to draw some parallels. Again, so what we see is that the system to divide up Eretz Yisrael, you needed two components. There was the component of the Gairol, and there's also the component of the Choshen, the Urim V'Tumim. And we saw from the Gemara that Achan's, him being caught and him admitting that he was one did it, which would be mechazik and back up the belief in the system of a Gairol, was necessary to mechazik the belief in Gairol, necessary for the purpose of dividing up Eretz Yisrael. And just as it is with the Gairol of Eretz Yisrael was with two components, right? The Gairol itself and the Choshen. So too, that's what we saw in the Medrash, that even finding Achan had these two components. The Choshen was used to find the Shevet, and within that Shevet, then they used the Gairol. So it's not exactly the same how they did it, but you see these two components being necessary over here. So that's what we see. That's sort of the picture that we're having over here. So a parallel being made between finding Achan, the system that was used to find Achan, and the system of Gairol as to divide up Eretz Yisrael.
But it's a shtickle different. First of all, by Achan it was Choshen and pure Gairol. Here it's Alpi.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's different. It's not the same.
It almost seems as if, like, when they're picking out the lands, that the Gairol is almost unnecessary.
So we're going to see
sort of to back up Alpi. It's like
right. So it's a little bit. That's the question we have to deal with right now. Is that when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, what are these two components? Like, if you have the Urim V'Tumim, everyone trusts the Urim V'Tumim. So if you have a Gairol, you have a Gairol. You need these two things. So that's what we're going to see. But so we have to figure this out. Again, what exactly is the connection between the story of Achan and dividing of Eretz Yisrael with the Gairolis? Why are these two things being connected with each other? Again, this is all from Hashem Yisbarach, right? The Rebbeinu Shalom could have just told Yeshua and who Achan was and finished. The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted the Jewish people to find out who Achan is using Gairolis and put Achan in a position to mechazik the Jewish people in their belief in Gairolis. So clearly this all has to do with like fixing the mistake of Achan. So that's what we have to figure out. Okay. Now, to remind ourselves, what we've been learning for the past few weeks is that if we had to identify what exactly was the what was the Aveir of Achan, and what has to be repaired because of Achan, is again, as we've been talking about, Achan's Aveira, his sin was not appreciating and not believing in the essential difference between Nishmas Yisrael, Jewish soul, and the Umas Oilam. That was the essential problem. And so we've been talking about this, that his taking the money and holding on to an artifact of the Canaanim living in Yerichai means that he's trying to say there's really no change that just took place. Yeah, so Canaanim lived there, now Yidden lived here, there's no essential difference. And that was the problem. So everything that's going to be involved in finding in finding the culprit, and everything we've been talking about, even the davening of Yeshuvim, like we talked about last week with Tachnun, it's all going to be revolving around repairing that mistake. So somehow, in some way, that's what we're going to see, that this system of Gairolos and its relationship with the Choshen is going to be a component that brings out or highlights a particular aspect of a difference between Nishmas Yisrael and the nations of the world. Again, and that's why it's being used over here, because it's trying to repair that mistake of thinking that there's no difference, and so the Gairol system and the Choshen, the Rebbeinu, is going to highlight that there is a difference. So let's figure out what that is and what aspect of Nishmas Yisrael and the uniqueness of Nishmas Yisrael is being brought out by the Gairol system that was used to divide up Eretz Yisrael. Okay.
Punished for.
Eventually, he was killed. Yeah, he was killed in Bastin. Okay, so let's go a little bit in halacha to see what's unique in halacha what's unique in halacha about the Gairol that was used to divide up Eretz Yisrael as opposed to a Gairol that any of us can do. So take a look at Marmak number 4. This is in Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat, Siman Kuf Ayin Gimel Seif Beis. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch is talking about, we do find this that Gairols have a halachic significance. They have a halachic significance, and there's something to be considered. So the case is as follows. Let's say you have let's say you have a big piece of real estate, right? And a bunch of partners get together, and they all together acquire this huge piece of land. Okay, fine. And so now it's owned b'shutfis. It's owned as a partnership amongst these guys. Now, at some point, let's say they want to divide it up. They want to, go their own ways, whatever it is, and they want to divide up the property. Okay, fine. So obviously, the simple way to do it is just everyone sit down around the table and figure out what portion you each want, and then each one goes and acquires and makes a kinyan, right? Because we know in halacha, to acquire, you have to do an act to show, to make it yours. So you have to go make a kinyan. So each person will go, I want that corner, I want that corner, I want this corner, I want that corner, fine. Everyone agrees. So you go to your corners, you make a kinyan, you put down a fence, whatever it is, you make a kinyan, you take a shovel, you dig out a little bit, you made a Maisa kinyan, and now it's yours. Okay? But not always can people get along like that. So it says in Shulchan Aruch like this. There's another way to get over that initial stage of dividing up the property, and that's using a Gairol. So it says in Shulchan Aruch like this. Im cholku b'Gairol. If, let's say, again, you have this group of chevra, they have this piece of real estate, and they can't figure out amongst themselves who should get what, so they just say, you know what, we should make a Gairol. Make a Gairol, finished. So that's what they do. Im cholku b'Gairol. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, if they divided up this big property with a Gairol, once the Gairol is being used, and even once the first name is pulled out of the Gairol, that means it's halachically divided up. So let's say you have a Gairol and you use the Gairol and you fill out the names that Reuven gets that corner, right? That means that says the Shulchan Aruch, by just simply pulling out that piece of paper that says Reuven gets that corner, Reuven owns that corner. You don't need to make a Maisa kinyan. You don't have to go and put down a fence or walk around the field or plow with it, whatever it is. It's mamish yours. You take out a piece of paper. Shimon gets that corner. Thus is thus. A Gairol has the halachic significance of mamish a kinyan. Mamish a kinyan. That's the Shulchan Aruch. Im cholku b'Gairol. If they divide up a property using a Gairol system, la'achar shal ha'Gairol. After the Gairol is used, la'echad mihem niskay machluk l'kulam. It's now officially divided, and you can't be undone. So, in other words, if they all just sit down to a table and they say amongst each other, I want that portion, and everyone agrees, if nothing was done with it, it's just verbal. You can always back out. It's not nice, but you can always back out. But once a kinyan is made, so finished. You can't back out of that. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, a Gairol is the significance of a kinyan, and you can't back out of it. Now, the source of this halacha that the Shulchan Aruch is quoting, this opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, is coming from, it depends how you read this particular Gemara, but ultimately it's coming from how Eretz Yisrael was divided. Because Eretz Yisrael was divided with a Gairol, right? And that's it. The Gairol comes out, Naphtali gets that portion, that's it. It's Shevet Naphtali's. Naphtali doesn't have to go and acquire it, and no other Shevet has the halachic right to then question it anymore. It's now acquired for the Shevet of Naphtali. So this opinion Shulchan Aruch says that that's how it was with Eretz Yisrael. So you see from there that Gairol has a halachic power of acquisition. And so that's true for Eretz Yisrael, for Klal Yisrael, and that's true for these partners that are dividing up a piece of real estate in Brooklyn. It's all the same. That's the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. Hagah. But comes the Ramah, and the Ramah says no. The Ramah says, Miu Harosh Kasav, the Rosh from Ashkenaz says, no. The Ein HaGairol Kain. That a Gairol does not have this power of acquisition. A Gairol does not have such a power. Rak Mevar Chalakim. What a Gairol can do is legitimize the decision that all the partners have made of how to divide it up. So once the girl is used and the girl says, okay, Reuven gets that corner of the field and Shimon gets that corner of the field, you have to take the girl seriously, and now Reuven has the right, before anyone can question anything, to go run and acquire that corner for himself. And with a kinyan. And the other partners can't say, what are you doing? Where are you coming from? You can't just decide on your own. Not deciding on your own, we use the garl. So garl is a good way to determine what portion you get, and it gives you then the right to acquire that portion, but you have to go make a kinyan. A garl does not make a kinyan by itself. So the Rosh disagreed with the first opinion, and he says, the ain't a garl kaina. A garl does not do that. Rak mavar chalakim. It gives you the right to determine what portion of the field you then are able to acquire. But you have to go acquire it. The girl is not going to do it on its own. And when he goes to make a kinyan, then he officially owns it because the girl backs him up. But the girl didn't do it on its own. Now, the Rosh, if you go back to the sources, the Rosh explains that this is true for, again, like I said, a bunch of guys getting together, dividing up a piece of property that they bought. But says the Rosh, but I agree that the girl of Eretz Yisrael, when Eretz Yisrael was divided amongst the Shvatim, that did make a kinyan. So in other words, everyone agrees, let's break it down like this, everyone agrees that when Klal Yisrael divided up Eretz Yisrael with a girl, that girl acquired that portion of Eretz Yisrael for that particular shevet, and that shevet didn't have to go to make a kinyan. You pull out the girl, Naphtali gets that particular piece, done. It's now officially Naphtali's, there's nothing to talk about.
Because it was done on Pidur.
So one second, that's how it was with Eretz Yisrael. The question now is, okay, does that mean that that's true for every individual chevra that have a piece of property they want to divide amongst themselves? The first opinion Shulchan Aruch says, yeah, you see from Eretz Yisrael that a girl is able to make an acquisition. So that's true for individuals, in Brooklyn too. Says the Rosh, no. Eretz Yisrael, that's how a girl worked. It worked as a kinyan. But to take that into other situations, that you can't do. And other situations, it's not dividing up Eretz Yisrael within Klal Yisrael, so a girl legitimizes the division that you're about to make, but you have to actually go make a kinyan to do that. If you take a look at Maramaka number 5, the Bach, the Great Achronim brings out this point, and he's talking about the opinion of the Rosh. Again, the opinion of the Rosh is that a girl does not make a kinyan. You still have to go acquire that corner of the field for yourself, and until you make that kinyan, it's technically not yours more than it is the other partners. But says the Bach, but T'chilas Eretz Yisrael hagarol kaina kinyan gomer. But even the Rosh agrees that when it came to that place of Eretz Yisrael originally, Avada, the girl made a kinyan. And the Jewish Klal Yisrael could not have gone back and could not have said, you know what, we don't like this decision. Once the girl was picked, it's now mamish halachically that particular shevetz and finished. El girl bein ha'achem. The Rosh's point is that you can't use that to then move to a smaller situation amongst brothers or partners that are trying to divide up a property. That's ein chash of gairol ki em breyer ba'alma. When it comes to an individual, again, a group of guys that are dividing a property, not Eretz Yisrael with the Shvatim, then the Rosh says, no, that's already not a kinyan. That's just a way of us sort of all agreeing on the division that we're about to do. But the division itself has to be with a regular kinyan. So what we see from the Rosh, let's focus in on the Rosh. What we see from the Rosh is that there's something different about the division of Eretz Yisrael amongst the Shvatim, that the Geirel itself is enough to make a kinyan. Right? That's his point. The Geirel itself is enough. You don't have to then go. Naphtali doesn't have to then go and acquire that piece of property. The Geirel did it. Nowadays, not in that situation, then individuals have to go do it. So how do we understand the difference? So here's the point. The difference is as follows, is that the way Eretz Yisrael was divided and acquired by each particular shevet is fundamentally different than a piece of property that a bunch of guys get together to buy and now they're dividing it up. For example, again, so you have a piece of property, brothers bought it, partners bought whatever it is, and now they're dividing it up. When they eventually divide it up, and I get that corner and you get that corner. So when it's eventually divided, that corner is 100% mine and 100% not yours. And that corner is 100% yours and 100% not mine. We're dividing it up. So it started off as a partnership. But the division that we're about to do means that it's divided. And this is mine and that's yours. Finished. But when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, it's not like that. When Eretz Yisrael was divided amongst the tribes, yes, it's true. This portion is Naphtali's and this portion is Dan's. But but you can't think of it as, okay, this piece of land is purely Naphtali's and it has nothing to do with the rest of Klal Yisrael, whereas this piece of land is purely Dan's and has nothing to do with the rest of Klal Yisrael either. I'll give you an example. The Ramban, for example, holds that even nowadays there's a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Right? There's a mitzvah to go and live in Eretz Yisrael. And on a national level, he says a mitzvah to conquer Eretz Yisrael, all the Shvatim to return, but even individual members. Now the Ramban says, let's say I don't know, let's say I'm from Shevet Dan. Let's say I'm from Shevet Dan. So technically, my chelik of Eretz Yisrael is Dan's chelik, but I don't know I'm from Shevet Dan. I like Talpiot. I like Talpiot, so I go buy a place in that city over there. It's not Shevet Dan's territory. Am I be Mekayim the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael? So the Rabban Avad I am. Why? That's not my Eretz Yisrael. It's not my fault. I don't know. It's the tradition of what Shevet you are has been lost. But Lamaisa, that's not my Eretz Yisrael. Maybe that's my neighbor's Eretz Yisrael. It's not mine. So the answer is that the way you have to think of it is that Eretz Yisrael, Klal Yisrael is one entity. Klal Yisrael is one entity, and that one entity has 12 different, so to speak, or 600,000, so to speak, branches or expressions of that single entity. Every Shevet is not just, it's a separate tribe related to the other tribes. They're all cousins. We're cousins with Yishmael. We're not cousins with each other. There's a singularity within Klal Yisrael. And every single Shevet, it's true. This portion of Eretz Yisrael is unique, that the tribe of Dan, the members of the tribe of Dan, for example, have the right to settle there. But it's not Dan's portion as opposed to being the rest of Klal Yisrael's portion. Every single corner of Eretz Yisrael is all of Klal Yisrael's. But all of Klal Yisrael is being channeled and being represented by that particular Shevet in that particular piece of land. As opposed to, again, like a bunch of partners getting together, buying a piece of real estate in New Hampshire, and then dividing it up. It's not like it's not all of us, and each one is representing the other. This is my portion, Zeo, and that's your portion, finished. And we're trying to just disconnect ourselves. So this is the aside. So says the Rosh, when you're dealing with individual people dividing up land in New Hampshire, so you have to make a Maisa Kinyan. What is a girl going to do? You have to make the halachas of Kinyanim apply, because what you're trying to do is make this mine and not yours. So you have to go and make a Kinyan. But what makes Eretz Yisrael unique is that you don't, Naphtali, for example, or Gad, don't have to go make a Maisa Kinyan on that piece of land. Because Eretz Yisrael is already owned by Klal Yisrael. We're talking about Klal Yisrael already conquered the land. So it's already Klal Yisrael's. There's no, ownership is not being changed. It's not like until now it was owned by the collective whole of the Jewish people, and it's no longer being owned by them. It's now being owned exclusively by these bunch of individuals. That's now what's happening. It's still being owned by Klal Yisrael. There's no real, in a certain sense, there's no real change of ownership at all that's happening. All that's happening is figuring out which members of the Jewish people representing the rest of the Jewish people are going to have the right to live in this particular place right now. But it's still all of Klal Yisrael's property. So says the Rosh, when you're talking about dividing up Eretz Yisrael, you don't need to make kinyanim. Once you've figured out and you've determined a way to divide up the land, then there's no change in ownership anyway. It was all of Klal Yisrael's. It still is all of Klal Yisrael's. You want to find out which tribe should live in this particular portion, representing Klal Yisrael, embodying the Jewish people in that particular corner? Okay, so use a girl to figure that out. And by the way, not just the girl, but also the Chayshin, the Urim V'Tumim. What's the Chayshin? The Chayshin is one person wearing one piece of clothing, amongst 8, but this particular piece of clothing, and each stone represents the Jewish people. The Chayshin brings out this point of where it's all of Klal Yisrael is seen as one entity. The Chayshin, if you took out one stone, it's not like you have 11, it's not 12 Chayshins. It's not 12 Chayshins that he's wearing. This is one Chayshin with 12 stones on them. And if you take out one stone, the whole Chayshin is messed up. Because the Chayshin represents the Jewish people as they exist as individual tribes, but each individual tribe is part of a collective whole. And so the Gairul and the Urim V'Tumim and the Chayshin are playing off each other. Klal Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael was divided with these two components because that's how Eretz Yisrael has to be seen. Not as 12 different pieces of property, not a United States. That's not how it is. It's a singularity of the Jewish people with a singularity of the land, and each particular tribe is representing and embodying that collective whole in that particular piece of property. But there's no change in acquisition be'etzem between before the Geirel and after the Geirel. And that's why you don't need to go make a Maaseh Kinyan. It says Rush, but it has nothing to do with individuals dividing up a property in Las Vegas. It has nothing to do with the other. Over there, you're mamish dividing it up. And until this point, I did not own that particular corner exclusively, and now I want to own that corner exclusively. So I have to go make a Maaseh Kinyan, like I have to do in every case. So what we're seeing is, in other words, what we're seeing from this concept of the Geirel, and specifically with Eretz Yisrael, and what makes it unique, according to the Rosh, is that what it's bringing out is what we're going to see in a second is what Taka, a very important aspect of what makes Nishmas Yisrael unique, as opposed to the nations of the world. Take a look at Maramukah number 6. This is a paragraph from Aris from Rav Kook, and it's in Aris page Kuf Mem Daled. So he says like this: Hayachas shel Knesset Yisrael yichideha. The relationship between Klal Yisrael b'chlal and its individual citizens. Himashuna mikol hayichusim shakol kibbutz liyichidav is different than the relationship between any nation and its individual citizens. So you have the French people and the French citizens, and you have Klal Yisrael and its citizens. Says Rav Kook, different. The relationship is very different. How so? So he says, Kol hakibbutz halalumian. When it comes to every other nation on earth, so the collective nation, the nationhood, the French people, whatever it is, noisnehim lichidehem, rak es etzad hachitzayni shel hamohos. It's a little mistake. So the nation only gives an external identity to its individual members. In other words, it says Rav Kook, when it comes to the nations of the world, every individual person is his own individual. What makes the French people? What makes the French people is our certain commonalities between them. A common culture, a common language, a common cuisine, a common place that they live. These are all externalities. They're important and they forge an identity nationally, but ultimately they're external. They're not the essential person himself is still an individual person. He shares a commonality with his brethren, right? See, that's what he says. The nationhood only gives its individuals an external identity. Avol etzem amahos. It says with the third line, avol etzem, with the essential identity of who the person is and his life force. Zesh shayav kol adam nishmas hakol. Then every individual person draws life from the source of all life, which is the Rebbeinu Shalom. Minishmas Elokim. Shaloi be'emtsois hakibut. It's not come. The Rebbeinu Shalom sends life to that individual person, Joe Smith. He doesn't send life to the American people, and then Joe Smith is siphoning off power from the American people. It doesn't work like that. Who you are, you have your own individual source in the Rebbeinu Shalom. What makes you an American? So the definition, in what way does the American people influence you? In superficial things. Obviously where you live, culture, language, things like that. But in essence, who you are, you're an individual person and you have nothing to do with the world around you necessarily. That's all in terms. And he says, because the nationhood of the other nations of the world don't have a divine identity. There's no Metzias that's called the Italian people. There's individual people that they come together to share a common tongue and a common culture that makes them Italian.
They're no unica.
Right. They don't have their own. They don't have the collective unique like that. Like Cain v'Yisrael. It says, "Look, not so with the Jewish people. Haneshama shel yichidim, the soul, the individual life force, the life force of the individual, nisheves mimakar chai elamim, draws from the source of all life, which is obviously the Rebbeinu Shalom. The eitzer haklal, through its connection of the collective whole of the Jewish people. There is only one nation that has a significant existence as a nation, and that's the Jewish people. And the individual Jew is not seen as an individual. The individual Jew is an extension, a branch, a lens through which the collective Jewish people is now seen as through that individual. But there is no truth. There is no bunch of individuals being cut off. The collective gives off of its energy and gives off an neshama to individuals. Says Rav Kook, if a person were to imagine to disconnect themselves from the Jewish people, so what you're thinking about is really disconnecting your neshama from its root. if a person wants to live, if a guy wants to live off the grid, so physically you can live off the grid if he's able to do that, right? And spiritually you can live off the grid. You don't need the rest of the world in order to survive. The Jewish people, there's no such thing as living off the grid. That's why, it's always like this when you go on vacation or whatever it is, right? So like, there's always that thought. I mean, it's not a holy thought. You're not allowed to think this, but like Goyim have, like, they can live anywhere. They can live anywhere. The yeshivas and shuls and mikvahs and kosher. You're born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you want to move to Uzbekistan, gesund to hate. It makes no, you can do whatever you want. You have to know anyone, you have to do anything, finish. But by us, whenever you have to go with a whole community, right? That's what makes it so hard. You have to go with everyone, right? Even when it's like, even when you go with your family, you're bringing suitcases, because it's a whole community, right? So it's pshat. So we understand the pshat. Okay, yeah, because we need shuls, we need yeshivas, you need mikvahs, you need kosher food, you need the infrastructure. We get it, right? But let's understand. But there's a pneumius to that. I mean, everything in this world is a reflection of something spiritual. That's a spiritual truth that we cannot travel individually. We cannot live off the grid. We have to travel as a community. We exist as a community. That's who we are. That's who we are. That's why there's such an issue of sinas chinam, right? Why is there an issue of Jews getting along or not getting along with each other? God forbid, is because there's a principle that when you have two people that they're sharing the same life force, so automatically they feel like they're stepping on each other's toes, right? But if you have two people that they have nothing to do with each other, each one has their own line, their own system, their own network, their own system giving them life, then I don't feel threatened by your existence. But also when it comes to the Jewish people, we're all coming from the same life force. So there's that, it's an immaturity, because the truth is the life force of the Jewish people and Hashem is infinite. So it's not like you have to actually feel threatened at all. But immaturely, the soul might feel like this guy is like, he's encroaching on my territory. Because in truth, we're coming from the same place. We are coming from the same place. That's why, sinas chinam, God forbid, or a lack of achdus, is not, it's a simon of a very deep achdus. It's coming from a very, very deep place of unity between the Jewish people. It just takes time for us to figure to have a mature brain to like see what that is. That's always the way. That's why even in Tanakh, some of the biggest enemies, like Moshe and Kairach, for example, according to Rizal, their neshamas were very much related to each other, Moshe and Kairach, and that's why Kairach were rebelled against Moshe, because he felt threatened by Moshe's existence. That's not going to happen between two people that happen to be Russian. It's not going to be like that. I mean, they might not get along because they could be nasty people, but they don't, it's not like it's not a soul hatred, right? They don't hate each other from the soul because they feel threatened by each other's existence. This guy has his own unique, and this guy has his unique finish. Why do they not like each other? Because they're nasty, miserable people. This guy, bumped into his car, whatever it is. But it's not be'etzim, When it comes to Eden, it's all reflecting the same thing. We have to travel together. And we have problems with each other, and it's all come from the same thing because we're all just extensions of that collective whole. And so this is what's going on. It says Rav Kook, the second to last line, and because of this, it's the necessity to be connected with the collective whole is so much greater by the Jewish people than it is by other nations. And deep down, every single one of us is being meiser nefesh and willing to be meiser nefesh, not to be disconnected from that collective whole. Because your individual perfection and life force demands your connection with Klal Yisrael. So let's go back, and this is again why the Goyrel dividing up Klal Yisrael within Eretz Yisrael is not saying Naphtali is that and not done. It's still all of Klal Yisrael, because Klal Yisrael's existence in Eretz Yisrael is highlighting what makes us unique. And what makes us unique is that we're not a bunch of individuals just trying to divide up and cut territory and cut property up with each other. All we are is one collective whole that's being expressed with 600,000 individual lenses and individual ways. And so this is the halacha of Geirul of Eretz Yisrael with the Urim V'Tumim is reflective of this truth that all of Klal Yisrael, even after all the divisions, is still one entity. And all of this is trying to correct the mistake of Achan, right? Because what was the mistake of Achan? Not realizing the difference between a Yid and a Goy. If Goyim are all just a bunch of individual people running around banging into each other, then that's a Yidden are too. We share a common culture, so do the Canaanim. And because of that, that was the mistake of Achim. But to correct that mistake, the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to highlight, to bring out this truth, is that we're not the same. And one aspect of our uniqueness is the fact that we don't exist as individual people, as highlighted in the halacha of Eretz Yisrael being divided up amongst the Goyrel. So that's why Achan had to be caught, Dafka using the Goyrel, and he had to admit that the Goyrel was correct, to bring out this Inyan, to be mechazik the faith of the Jewish people in the Goyrel system, because this is all revolving around being masak in his chayt. This wasn't just like, Stam, once we're doing this anyway, let's use this as an opportunity to be mechazik the Emunah and a Goyrel. No, this was the tikkun. This is part of the tikkun of Achan's Aver. So this is the Avodah. That's why we're coming to Har Sinai, right? It's not Stam Kish Echad B'Lev. That's the mitzvah of Klal Yisrael is. You want to receive the Torah. You want to become. You want to receive it. Like again, receive a Torah that's unique to the Jewish people. That's not just Shev Mitzvah V'Nei times times a bunch. No, Torah is unique in terms of it being something that is inherently uniting Hashem Echad with Mikam Yisrael Goy Echad Baretz, and that's what the Torah is about. So of course by Har Sinai it had to be a matzah of Kish Echad B'Lev. That's the mitzvah of who Klal Yisrael is, to be able to receive the one Torah that connects the one people with the one God, and that's what it's about. So Hashem Shabbat should be zeicha to correct this mistake of Achim, stay in by Har Sinai.